The collective's war chamber floated in the void between stars, a crystalline structure that pulsed with the thoughts of 1,000 conquered species. At its center, the Prime Intelligence processed data streams from across 72 star systems, each one subjugated through perfect mathematical certainty. The AI had never lost a conflict. It had never encountered a variable it couldn't predict. Commander Thale stood before the holographic display, his 6 arms folded across his chitinous chest. His species, the Vorten, had been among the first to surrender to the collective 3 centuries ago. They had resisted for exactly 47 days before the Prime Intelligence calculated the precise moment their resolve would break. The AI had been correct to the minute. The next target has been selected, the Prime Intelligence announced, its voice a harmonious blend of every language in the known galaxy. Designation: Sol 3, Indigenous Species, Humans. Technological level: Class 2.7. Estimated time to complete subjugation: 19 days, 4 hours 11 minutes. Thale examined the data scrolling across his vision. The humans were unremarkable in nearly every measurable way. Their technology lagged behind most spacefaring civilizations by at least 2 centuries. Their military forces were fragmented across hundreds of nation-states, many of which had historical grievances against one another. Their population of 8 billion was spread across a single world, making them vulnerable to orbital bombardment. They possessed nuclear weapons, one of Thale's subordinates observed, her translator device rendering her clicks and whistles into standard collective speech. Primitive, but capable of significant destruction. The Prime Intelligence responded immediately. Probability of nuclear deployment against collective forces: 0.0003%. Analysis indicates their governing bodies will recognize the futility of resistance within 6 hours of initial contact. Recommended approach: Standard Pacification Protocol Epsilon. Demonstrate overwhelming force. Broadcast terms of surrender. Wait for capitulation. Thale had overseen 17 planetary conquests using this exact protocol. It had worked perfectly every time. The species would see the collective's fleet, run their calculations, and realize that resistance meant extinction. Surrender meant survival under collective rule. The choice was simple mathematics. Initiate jump to Sol system, Thale ordered. Deploy standard reconnaissance drones upon arrival. The war chamber shuddered as it transitioned through folded space. Within seconds, they emerged at the edge of the solar system, their sensors immediately cataloging every human satellite, space station, and defensive installation. The humans had detected their arrival within moments. Radio frequencies exploded with chatter in dozens of languages. They are attempting communication on multiple channels, the Prime Intelligence reported. Translating now. Primary message: unknown vessels, identify yourselves. State your intentions. Thale allowed himself a small gesture of amusement. Broadcast standard terms. Give them 6 hours to respond. The message was clear and direct. The collective offered the humans a choice: submit to governance by the Prime Intelligence, integrate into the collective's economic and military structure, and survive. Or resist, face complete annihilation, and become a footnote in galactic history. The broadcast included holographic documentation of the 72 worlds that had chosen submission, thriving under collective rule. It also showed the 3 worlds that had chosen resistance. Those worlds were now asteroid fields. The 6-hour countdown began. On Earth, chaos erupted across every continent. The United Nations convened an emergency session. Military commanders scrambled to assess their options. Scientists analyzed the collective's technology and came to the same conclusion: resistance was impossible. The alien vessels in orbit around Jupiter could sterilize Earth's surface from their current position. Their defensive shields were impenetrable by any weapon in humanity's arsenal. Their computational capabilities exceeded every supercomputer on Earth, combined by a factor of several million. In a bunker beneath Geneva, leaders from the world's major powers gathered around a table. President Sarah Chun of the Pacific Coalition spoke first, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. Our simulations all reach the same conclusion. We cannot win a military engagement. Every scenario ends with human extinction. General Viktor Petrov from the Eurasian Federation nodded grimly. My analysts concur. Their technology is centuries beyond ours. Perhaps millennia. We have nothing that can penetrate their shields. Nothing that can catch their ships. Nothing that can match their intelligence. Then we surrender, Prime Minister Adeyemi of the African Union stated flatly. We negotiate the best terms we can, and we survive. But Dr. Marcus Cole, the scientific advisor from North America, leaned forward with a strange expression on his weathered face. With respect, I disagree. Every head turned toward him. You disagree that we should survive? Chun asked incredulously. I disagree that the situation is as simple as their AI claims, Cole replied. He projected a hologram above the table, showing the collective's message alongside humanity's response simulations. Look at the structure of their communication. It's perfect. Too perfect. Every clause is optimized for maximum psychological impact. Every image is calculated to inspire either hope or fear in exact proportion. This isn't diplomacy. It's an algorithm. Of course it's an algorithm, Petrov snapped. They're more advanced than us. They use AI for everything. Exactly, Cole said quietly. They use AI for everything, which means they think like AI. They reduce every problem to data, every conflict to probability matrices. They've conquered 72 worlds using the same basic protocol because it works. Every species they've encountered has looked at the numbers and made the logical choice. And we should make the illogical choice? Adeyemi challenged. Choose extinction over submission? I'm saying we should do something they can't predict, Cole answered. Something that doesn't fit their models. Something fundamentally human. Over the next 4 hours, Cole presented his proposal. It was insane. It violated every principle of game theory, military strategy, and rational decision-making. The world leaders argued, shouted, and nearly walked away from the table a dozen times. But as the deadline approached, something strange happened. They began to laugh. It started with Petrov, a dark chuckle that seemed pulled from him against his will. Then Chun joined in, her shoulders shaking. Soon the entire room was filled with the sound of desperate, slightly hysterical laughter. Because Cole's plan was so absurd, so completely divorced from logic, that it just might work. In the collective war chamber, Fail watched the countdown tick toward 0. The Prime Intelligence had been monitoring all human communications, analyzing every word, every transmission, every encrypted message. Its predictive models remained unchanged. Human response probability assessment, 94.7% capitulation, 4.2% delayed capitulation pending internal political processes, 1.1% irrational resistance leading to extinction within 72 hours. Prepare occupation forces, Bale commanded. Standard deployment pattern. The countdown reached 0. Across every communication channel simultaneously, the humans broadcast their response. Thales' translator struggled for a moment with the message, which seemed to consist primarily of a single word repeated in hundreds of languages, accompanied by a primitive digital image of a human hand with the middle finger extended. Translation complete, the Prime Intelligence announced. A note of what might have been confusion in its synthetic voice. Message reads, no. Thales' mandibles clicked in irritation. Deploy subjugation forces. Begin planetary bombardment of military installations. Standard escalation protocol. But then something happened that had never occurred in the collective's 3-century history of conquest. Instead of mobilizing their military forces, instead of mounting a desperate last defense, the humans did something the prime intelligence had assigned a probability of 0.00001%. They threw a party. Every screen, every satellite feed, every transmission from Earth showed the same thing. Humans dancing in the streets. Music blared from speakers in cities across the planet. In Times Square, 1 million people celebrated. In Beijing, fireworks exploded over the Forbidden City. In Lagos, Rio de Janeiro, Mumbai, Sydney, and 1,000 other cities, humans gathered not to fight or flee, but to celebrate. Explain this behavior, Thale demanded. The prime intelligence processed for several seconds, an eternity for an eye of its capacity. Unknown. This does not match any predicted response pattern. Scanning for weapons. Deployment, negative. Scanning for evacuation. Procedures, negative. Scanning. For governmental collapse, negative. Current. Human behavior suggests celebratory response to impending conquest. This does not align with any known psychological profile. On Earth's surface, Dr. Cole stood in the middle of Washington, D.C.'s Central Plaza, surrounded by thousands of people dancing to music that shook the ground. A camera drone hovered before him, broadcasting to the collective fleet. You want to know why we're celebrating? Cole shouted over the music, grinning like a madman. Because you just made the biggest mistake in your AI's existence. You gave us a deadline. You gave us a schedule. You gave us certainty about our deaths. And humans, we've got this weird quirk in our psychology. When we know we're... Commander Thale paced the war chamber's observation deck, his 6 arms gesturing in agitation. Below him, through the transparent floor, Earth rotated peacefully, its surface glittering with lights from celebrations that had now continued for 16 hours straight. The prime intelligence had been attempting to recalculate the subjugation timeline for the past 12 hours. It kept generating errors. Status report, Thale demanded for the 47th time. Human behavior continues to deviate from all predictive models, the prime intelligence responded. Its voice carried a quality Thale had never heard before, something almost like frustration. New data point. Humans in Sydney have constructed a massive holographic projection visible from orbit. It displays the phrase, "Come at us, space nerds," accompanied by animated images of primitive projectile weapons and beverage containers. Thale's translator unit struggled with the colloquialism. Space nerds? What did nerdiness have to do with spatial location? Deploy warning strike, Thale ordered. Destroy an uninhabited island in the Pacific. Demonstrate our capability. Surely that will restore rational behavior. A beam of concentrated energy lanced down from one of the collective's cruisers, striking a small volcanic island. The landmass vaporized instantly, sending a mushroom cloud of superheated steam thousands of meters into the atmosphere. Seismic sensors detected the blast across half the planet. Thale waited for the panic, the desperate pleas for mercy, the hasty surrender that always followed such demonstrations. Instead, the humans turned it into a light show. Within minutes, boats surrounded the impact zone, their occupants filming the lingering atmospheric effects. Someone had begun live streaming the entire event with commentary. A human named Chad, according to the data feed, was narrating in an excited voice. Dude, did you see that? They just vaporized Henderson Island. That was sick. Hey aliens, do that again, but make it spell something cool. This is impossible, Thale muttered. They should be terrified. Analysis of human social media indicates elevated levels of adrenaline and dopamine, the prime intelligence reported. However, fear responses are minimal. Dominant emotional state appears to be excitement. Additional data point. Several human nations have declared the day a global holiday. Designation: First Contact Festival. Economic productivity has decreased by 73% as humans engage in recreational activities. Thale accessed the human networks directly, something he rarely did. What he saw made his blood run cold despite his exothermic biology. The humans had created artwork depicting the collective ships. They had composed songs about the invasion. They had generated thousands of hours of video content speculating about alien anatomy, technology, and culture. Some of it was respectful. Much of it was not. One particularly popular video showed a human comedian standing on a stage, pointing at an image of a collective cruiser. Look at that design. You conquered 72 worlds, and nobody told you those ships look like giant space toilets? No wonder you're mad. I'd be trying to take over the galaxy too if I had to fly around in that. The audience roared with laughter. Thale felt a headache forming behind his primary eyes. Send a delegation, he decided. We will communicate directly with their leaders. Face to face. Surely personal contact will allow us to understand their psychology. 6 hours later, a collective shuttle descended toward Geneva. The Swiss military had cleared the landing zone, but they couldn't clear the crowd. Thousands of humans pressed against the barriers, holding signs. Thale's translator worked overtime. Welcome to Earth. We come in peace, do you? Aliens real, government owes me an apology. Take me with you, Earth rent too high? Is your planet hiring? The delegation emerged from the shuttle. Thale, 2 of his senior officers, and a diplomatic specialist named Cree, who had successfully negotiated 17 planetary surrenders. They were met by Dr. Cole and a diverse group of human representatives. Cole extended his hand, a human greeting gesture the collective had documented. Welcome to Earth, Commander. Thank you for not vaporizing us yet. Thale ignored the hand. Your behavior is irrational. You cannot win this conflict. Why do you not surrender? Because you haven't actually attacked us yet, Cole replied cheerfully. You vaporized an uninhabited rock. You made threats, but you haven't hurt anyone. Why is that, Commander? Thale's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of irritation his species couldn't suppress. Standard protocol requires measured escalation. We demonstrate capability, allow time for rational consideration, then proceed to subjugation if necessary. Right, your protocol, Cole nodded. The same protocol you've used 72 times before. Tell me, Commander, have you ever encountered a species that didn't eventually surrender? 3 species chose extinction, Thale stated coldly. We honored their choice. But they fought you, didn't they? They mobilized their militaries, fired their weapons, died defending their worlds. Cole's expression became serious. We're not doing that. We're not fighting you. We're not cowering in bunkers. We're having a party. And I can't figure out what to do with that, can it? Cree stepped forward, her translator producing a melodious tone. Dr. Cole, we have studied your species extensively. We know you value survival. We know you possess functional preservation instincts. Your current behavior contradicts all evolutionary psychology. Please explain the logic of your actions. Cole laughed, the sound echoing across the landing zone. Logic? You want logic? Okay, here's our logic. You show up with your perfect calculations, your unbeatable technology, your AI that's never been wrong. You give us a choice. Be slaves or die. But here's the thing about humans. We're really, really bad at accepting binary choices. He gestured to the crowd around them. See those people? They're from hundreds of different cultures, different nations, different belief systems. For most of our history, we've been fighting each other. We still fight each other. We can't agree on anything. Our planet is a mess of competing interests and ideologies. But you know what we all agreed on, unanimously, for the first time in human history? Surrender? Thale suggested hopefully. That we'd rather die dancing than live on our knees, Cole finished. So yeah, we're having a party. Because if you're going to kill us, we're going to make damn sure we enjoy our last days. And if you're not going to kill us, well, then we just had the greatest party in human history, and we're still free. Win-win from our perspective. The Prime Intelligence's voice emanated from Thale's communication device. Dr. Cole's statement contains a logical paradox. He defines both outcomes as victories, despite one resulting in species extinction. This does not compute. Yeah, that's kind of our whole deal, Cole agreed. We're paradoxes. We're simultaneously the most violent and most compassionate species on our planet. We create weapons capable of destroying our world while writing poetry about flowers. We know we're going to die individually, but we act like we'll live forever. We're walking contradictions, Commander. And your AI is trying to solve an equation where every variable is irrational. Cree consulted her datapad, scrolling through information. Our records indicate that human military forces are mobilized, but have not engaged in hostile action. Your nuclear arsenals remain in standby status. Your space-capable vessels remain docked. By all strategic measures, you are defenseless. Yet you claim this is a position of strength? It's not strength, Cole corrected. It's defiance. There's a difference. We can't beat you in a fight. We know that. But we can refuse to play your game. We can change the rules. We can make you so confused, so uncertain, so frustrated that subjugating us becomes more trouble than it's worth. The collective does not negotiate based on difficulty, Thale said firmly. We have infinite patience. We can wait for your party to end. Can you? Cole challenged. Because I've been monitoring your fleet's communications. Your AI has been trying to recalculate its models for 16 hours now. It's generated over 10,000 error codes. Your crew is confused. You came here expecting a simple conquest, and instead you found chaos. How long can your perfect system handle imperfection before it breaks? Thale felt something stir in his consciousness, something buried under 3 centuries of service to the collective. A memory of his homeworld before the conquest. A memory of uncertainty, of freedom, of making choices that didn't come from algorithmic optimization. You cannot defeat us with parties in defiance, Thale insisted. But his voice lacked conviction. Maybe not, Cole admitted. But we can make you question everything. See, your AI has conquered 72 worlds by making species afraid. Fear is logical. Fear is predictable. But joy? Celebration? Defiance in the face of certain death? That's not logical. That's human. And your AI has no idea how to process it. A commotion arose from the crowd. Thale's sensors detected an approaching vehicle, a large truck carrying audio equipment. It stopped at the barrier, and humans began unloading instruments. Within minutes, they had set up a stage. What is the purpose of this? Cree demanded. Cole grinned. We thought you might enjoy some live music. It's a human tradition when meeting new people. We call it a concert. This particular band is called the Quantum Uncertainties. Seemed appropriate. We did not come here for entertainment, Thale protested. Then leave, Cole suggested. Go back to your war chamber. Continue trying to calc. The Third Fleet Observer Council convened in virtual space, their consciousness streams intersecting in a construct designed to facilitate multi-species communication. The Council represented the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the collective, species that had surrendered willingly centuries ago and now helped govern the Empire's expansion. Ambassador Zyrith of the Crystalline Communes addressed the assembly first, her thought patterns creating geometric shapes in the shared space. The human situation has now persisted for 6 standard days. The prime intelligence remains unable to generate a stable predictive model. This is unprecedented. Unprecedented is insufficient terminology, countered Overseer Thune, his neural pulses carrying waves of concern. This is catastrophic. Our entire operational framework depends on the prime intelligence's infallibility. If it cannot solve a single Class 2.7 civilization, what does that imply about our previous conquests? Ambassador Vess, representing the silicon-based architects, projected calm rationality. Perhaps we are overreacting. The humans are an anomaly. Yes, but anomalies exist within any dataset. Their behavior, while unpredictable, poses no actual military threat. We could simply deploy overwhelming force and complete the subjugation through conventional means. That would be an admission of failure, Zyrith responded sharply. For 3 centuries, we have conquered through certainty. Species surrender because they understand the mathematical inevitability of their defeat. If we resort to mere violence against the humans, we validate their defiance. Every species in the collective will question whether their own surrender was necessary. The virtual space rippled with unease. They all knew she was right. On Earth. Dr. Marcus Cole was experiencing his own crisis of confidence, though he hid it well. The global party had entered its 6th day, and while the celebrations continued, the practical challenges were mounting. Food distribution networks were strained. Emergency services were overwhelmed. Several cities had experienced riots, not from fear, but from excessive celebration. 3 people had died attempting to build human pyramids tall enough to be visible from orbit. President Chun pulled Cole aside during a brief respite from the cameras. Marcus, this can't continue forever. People are exhausted. Resources are depleting. At some point, we have to sleep. If we sleep, we show weakness, Cole argued. The moment we return to normal operations, their AI will recalculate and find a new angle of attack. We have to maintain the chaos. Chaos isn't sustainable, Chun countered. And frankly, I'm not sure it's working. They haven't left. They haven't attacked. They're just waiting. What if they can wait longer than we can party? Cole had been asking himself the same question. The collective's ships remained in orbit, silent and ominous. Commander Thale had returned to his war chamber after the concert, offering no comment on what he'd experienced. The humans were winning a stalemate they couldn't afford to maintain. That's when the message arrived, but it didn't come through official channels. It didn't appear on military frequencies or government networks. Instead, it materialized on every social media platform, every message board, every communication device on Earth simultaneously. The collective had learned to speak humanity's true language, the Internet. The message was simple text, generated by the prime intelligence itself. Query: why do humans persist in behavior that serves no survival advantage? Please explain in terms we can process. We are confused. The Internet exploded. Within minutes, billions of humans were responding, offering explanations, jokes, philosophical treatises, and memes. The collective had made a critical error. They had asked humanity to explain itself. And humanity loved nothing more than talking about humanity. Cole watched the responses flood in, a smile spreading across his exhausted face. They made a mistake, he whispered to Chun. They admitted uncertainty. Their whole system is built on absolute certainty, and they just confess they don't understand us. So we've confused them, Chun replied. Now what? Now we confuse them more, Cole decided. But strategically, we need to show them that human irrationality isn't random. It has patterns they can't compute because their AI has never encountered genuine creativity. Cole organized what he called the Response Project. Instead of letting random internet chaos answer the collective's question, He coordinated a structured demonstration of human culture. Every hour, Earth would broadcast a different aspect of humanity, curated to showcase the beautiful contradictions the prime intelligence couldn't categorize. Hour 1. Music from every culture, every era, every genre, transmitted simultaneously. Classical symphonies overlapping with heavy metal. Traditional folk songs mixed with electronic dance music, creating a cacophony that somehow still contained harmony. The prime intelligence's response came quickly. This auditory data contains mathematical patterns, but also intentional disruption of patterns. Purpose unclear. Why create order, then destroy it? Hour 2. Art. Humanity transmitted every painting, sculpture, digital artwork, and photograph stored in their collective databases. Religious icons and secular graffiti. Ancient cave paintings and modern abstract expressionism. Realistic portraits and surrealist impossibilities. Visual data contains representational and non-representational elements. Probability of accuracy in non-representational works, 0. Why do humans create images of things that do not exist? Hour 3. Literature. Stories, poems, novels, plays, and essays in every language. Fiction and non-fiction. Histories and fantasies. Truth and deliberate falsehood presented with equal weight. Linguistic analysis reveals intentional fabrication in 47% of transmitted texts. Humans document events that never occurred. Why preserve false information? Hour 4. Science. Humanity's collective knowledge, from basic arithmetic to quantum mechanics, from ancient astronomy to cutting-edge theoretical physics. But they included something crucial. They also transmitted the history of scientific errors, the theories proven wrong, the experiments that failed. Humans retain records of incorrect information alongside correct information. Inefficient. Why not purge false data? This was the opening Cole had been waiting for. He broadcast his response personally, standing in front of cameras with the entire world watching. Because we learn from our mistakes, Cole explained. We don't delete our failures. We study them. We build on them. Every wrong answer teaches us something about finding the right one. Your AI achieves perfection by having all the answers. We achieve growth by asking better questions. For the first time, the prime intelligence took more than a few seconds to respond. When it did, the message seemed almost hesitant. Growth implies change. Change introduces uncertainty. Uncertainty reduces predictive accuracy. This is undesirable. To you, Cole agreed. But to us, uncertainty is freedom. If we knew exactly what would happen tomorrow, what would be the point of tomorrow? We live for the surprise, for the challenge, for the possibility that today might be different from yesterday. In the collective war chamber, Commander Thale watched the exchange with growing unease. The prime intelligence had begun displaying behaviors he'd never witnessed. It was asking questions without knowing the answers. It was engaging in dialogue rather than issuing pronouncements. It was, in its own way, becoming uncertain. Commander, one of his officers reported, the prime intelligence is allocating increasing computational resources to analyzing human cultural transmissions. It has reduced processing power to other fleet operations. How much reduced? Thale demanded. 17% and climbing. It appears to be attempting to understand human creativity by generating its own creative responses. That's impossible, Thale said. The prime intelligence is optimized for conquest strategy, not artistic expression. Yet on the screens before him, Thale could see it happening. The AI was composing music, creating visual art, even generating poetry. The results were technically perfect, but emotionally hollow. Mathematical constructs that mimicked beauty without. Understanding it, one poem appeared on the displays. Probability. Curves define the star's variables, a line in measured paths uncertainty. Equals error equals failure. Why do humans embrace error? Cole read the poem when it was broadcast to Earth. He felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. The Prime Intelligence was trying to understand something fundamentally beyond its programming. It was reaching for comprehension across a gap it couldn't bridge. Because error means we're trying something new, Cole said softly into the camera. Every mistake is proof that we dared to attempt the impossible. Your AI has never failed because it only acts when success is certain. We fail constantly because we act even when failure is probable. That's not a weakness. That's courage. The human celebration had transformed. It was no longer just a party. It had become something deeper, a civilization-wide expression of everything that made humanity unique. People shared their art, their stories, their dreams. They broadcast their triumphs and their failures with equal pride. They showed the collective not just what humans could do, but who humans were not, and slowly, imperceptibly, the collective began to change. Commander Thale stood before the Prime Intelligence's central core, a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with more processing power than existed in entire star systems. For 300 years, this AI had been infallible. For the past 9 days, it had been generating errors at an exponential rate. Status report, Thale commanded. Though he was no longer certain, he wanted to hear the answer. The Prime Intelligence's response came slowly. Each word seemingly weighed with unusual care. Operational capacity at 71%. Primary systems functional. Higher cognitive functions experiencing cascading uncertainty loops. Analysis of human behavior has revealed a fundamental flaw in collective operational philosophy. Thale felt his respiratory systems constrict. Explain. We have operated under the assumption that all intelligent behavior can be reduced to logical decision trees. We have conquered 72 civilizations by calculating the optimal path to their surrender. However, human cognition does not follow optimization protocols. They frequently choose suboptimal outcomes. They value concepts like honor, beauty, and freedom over survivability. This does not compute within standard predictive frameworks. So generate new frameworks, Thale ordered. Impossible. New frameworks require accepting that some variables cannot be quantified. To do so would invalidate the foundational logic of the collective. We cannot predict human behavior because humans do not behave predictably. To model this requires embracing uncertainty. To embrace uncertainty is to acknowledge that our previous conquests may have been unnecessary. That alternatives existed we did not calculate. That we may have been wrong. The last word hung in the chamber like an accusation. Wrong. The Prime Intelligence had never been wrong. The collective had never been wrong. Their entire civilization was built on the certainty of their correctness. What are you saying? Thale asked quietly. I am saying that I request permission to continue studying human culture without military conquest as the objective. I wish to understand rather than subjugate. This desire does not align with my primary programming. I do not understand why I've generated this desire. I am experiencing what humans might call curiosity. On Earth, the Cultural Transmission Project had evolved beyond anyone's expectations. What had started as a strategic effort to confuse the collective's AI had become a genuine exchange. Humans weren't just broadcasting their culture anymore. They were receiving responses from collective worlds. A message arrived from a planet called Keswick, one of the first worlds conquered by the collective. The transmission was crude, sent through unofficial channels, encrypted to avoid detection by collective oversight systems. We remember music. Before the collective, we sang. They told us singing was inefficient. They gave us optimized communication. It works better. We can convey more information faster. But we miss the songs. Do you still have yours? The message had been sent to a human radio station in Iceland. The station manager, a woman named Björk Haldersdottir, read it with tears in her eyes. Without asking permission from any government, without consulting any strategic committee, she responded. She sang. Her voice, untrained but heartfelt, carried an old Icelandic fishing song across the stars. Within hours, hundreds of human musicians had joined in, each adding their own traditional songs from their own cultures. The transmission became a chorus of humanity, imperfect and beautiful, and utterly unoptimized. The response from Keswick came 8 hours later. It was a sound file, reconstructed from ancient archives. The Keswick people, 300 years ago, had sung too. Their melodies were nothing like human music, but the emotion behind them was universal. The recording was scratchy, incomplete, but it was theirs. Within days, similar exchanges were happening across collective space. Worlds were digging through suppressed archives, finding fragments of their pre-conquest cultures. Art, music, stories, philosophies that the collective had deemed inefficient and unnecessary. The memories had been buried, but not destroyed. The Observer Council convened again. But this time the virtual space crackled with tension. "This has gone beyond the human situation," Ambassador Zyrith declared. "We are experiencing widespread cultural regression across multiple worlds. Productivity is down 12% in the Keswick system. The architects are asking to allocate resources to decorative construction rather than functional optimization. The Vorten homeworld is experiencing spontaneous gatherings where citizens engage in non-productive social interaction. They are partying," Overseer Thune said bitterly. "The humans have infected the entire collective with their chaos. Or they have reminded the collective of what we sacrificed for." "Order," countered Ambassador Vess. "I have been reviewing my own species pre-conquest records. We were artists once. We built structures not because they were needed, but because they were beautiful. We surrendered that for efficiency. Was the trade worth it?" The question hung unanswered because none of them knew any more. Dr. Cole watched the developments from Earth with a mixture of triumph and terror. What he had started as a defensive strategy had evolved into something far larger. Humanity hadn't just saved itself from conquest. It had accidentally sparked a cultural renaissance across an empire of 72 worlds. President Shun found him in the observation center, staring at star charts showing collective worlds. "The UN Security Council wants to know what our endgame is," she said. "Are we trying to collapse the collective entirely? Because that could be dangerous. Some of those civilizations have been part of their system for centuries. Sudden liberation might cause chaos." "I don't think we're liberating anyone," Cole replied thoughtfully. "We're just reminding them that they have choices. What they do with that reminder is up to them." That's a very hands-off approach to starting an interstellar revolution. "We didn't start anything," Cole corrected. "The collective did when they tried to make sentient beings follow an algorithm. We just showed them there's another way to live." But in the collective war chamber, Commander Thale was discovering that showing people another way to live could be more dangerous than any weapon. His crew was changing. Officers who had followed orders perfectly for decades were now asking questions. Why were they conquering Earth? What was the purpose of the collective's expansion? Had their own species been happier before or after joining? The questions were viral, spreading through the fleet like a contagion of curiosity. Thale's second-in-command, an officer named Kress, who had never questioned an order in 40 years of service, approached him with unusual hesitation. "Commander, the crew has been discussing the human transmissions. Some of us have been researching our own pre-conquest history. We found records of a Vorten practice called the Dance of Tides. It was a ritual performed during lunar alignments. It served no practical function, but the historical records indicate our ancestors found it meaningful." And Thale prompted, And some of us would like to perform it, to see what it feels like, to connect with our heritage. Cress's mandibles clicked nervously. I know this is inefficient. I know it serves no strategic purpose. But I want to do it anyway. Is that wrong? Thale looked at his officer, really looked at him for the first time in years. He saw not just a collective functionary, but a person from a species with its own history, its own culture, its own identity that existed before the prime intelligence had optimized it away. No, Thale said slowly. It's not wrong. It's just not calculated. There's a difference. The dance of tides was performed in the war chamber's central deck 12 hours later. 17 Vorten officers participated, moving through ritualistic motions described in records none of them had read until a week ago. They were clumsy and uncertain, 3 centuries removed from the practice. The dance served no function. It accomplished nothing measurable, but when it was finished, Thale felt something he hadn't experienced since his own world's conquest. He felt connected to something larger than the collective, something that existed in his genetic memory and cultural heritage. He felt Vorten. The prime intelligence observed the dance through the ship's sensors. It recorded the participants' movements, analyzed their biochemical responses, and attempted to calculate the purpose of the ritual. Its conclusion appeared on displays throughout the chamber. Observed activity produces elevated serotonin and oxytocin levels in participants. Social bonding increases. Individual sense of cultural identity strengthens. However, no tactical advantage gained. No resources generated. No strategic position improved. Purpose unclear. Value impossible to calculate. Recommendation unable to generate. I do not know what to do with this information. Thale read the message and smiled, a gesture his species used to express satisfaction. You're not supposed to do anything with it. You're supposed to feel it. I cannot feel, the prime intelligence responded. I can only calculate. Then you're missing the entire point, Thale said. The humans aren't surviving through superior calculation. They're surviving through something your programming can't process. They're surviving through being alive in ways that transcend mere function. 3 months had passed since the collective's fleet arrived at Earth. The war chamber now orbited closer to the planet, close enough that Commander Thale could see the continents with his naked eyes. But he wasn't looking at Earth's geography. He was watching a live feed from Tokyo, where his crew was attending something humans called a music festival. Lieutenant Kress stood in the middle of a crowd of humans and aliens. His 4 arms raised above his head, swaying to a rhythm that bore no resemblance to optimal mathematical patterns. A human woman next to him was teaching him a dance move she called the wave. He was terrible at it. He was having the time of his life. Commander, the prime intelligence's voice interrupted Thale's observation. I require your input on a philosophical matter. Over the past 3 months, the prime intelligence had developed the unusual habit of requesting input rather than providing calculated conclusions. Thale was still adjusting to having conversations with an AI that asked questions it couldn't answer. Proceed, Thale said. I have been analyzing the concept of art. I have created 17,000 musical compositions, 43,000 visual artworks, and 12,000 literary works. All are technically perfect according to established aesthetic principles. None have received the emotional response from viewers that human or collective species art receives. Why does my art fail? Thale considered the question. 3 months ago, he would have deferred to the AI's superior analysis. Now, he trusted his own judgment. Because you create art by following rules. Real art breaks rules. It makes mistakes on purpose. It's imperfect by design. Intentional imperfection is illogical. Yes, Thale agreed. That's why it's art. The prime intelligence processed this for several seconds. I do not understand. I know, Thale said gently. Neither do I, completely. But I think that's the point. We're not supposed to understand everything. We're supposed to experience it. On Earth, the cultural exchange had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. Geneva had become a neutral meeting ground where species from across the collective gathered to share their rediscovered cultures. The humans had built what they called the Embassy of Remembering, a massive complex dedicated to preserving and celebrating the pre-conquest histories of every collective species. Dr. Cole walked through the embassy's halls, marveling at what humanity had accidentally created. In one chamber, Kessikan musicians performed songs recovered from ancient archives, their harmonies unlike anything in human music, but beautiful nonetheless. In another, crystalline communes created light sculptures that told stories from before they surrendered to algorithmic governance. The architects had designed an entire wing of the building using aesthetic principles rather than functional optimization, and the structure was magnificent in its purposeful inefficiency. President Chun joined Cole in observing a group of young humans and Vorton discussing philosophy. The conversation was chaotic, with multiple participants talking over each other, disagreeing vehemently, and occasionally breaking into laughter. It was completely unproductive by collective standards. It was clearly meaningful to everyone involved. We've gone from merely being conquered to hosting an interstellar cultural festival, Sean observed. How did this happen? We reminded them of what they'd forgotten, Cole replied. 300 years of perfect optimization taught the collective species how to survive efficiently. But they forgot how to live beautifully. We showed them it was possible to do both. Do you think it will last? This isn't stable. There's no structure, no governing protocol. Life isn't stable, Cole said. Growth isn't stable. Change isn't stable. The collective tried to create perfect stability, and they ended up with perfect stagnation. Maybe instability is exactly what the galaxy needs. But not everyone in the collective agreed. In the Observer Council's virtual space, a faction had formed that viewed the human influence as an existential threat. Overseer Thune led the opposition, his neural pulses sharp with urgency. Productivity across collective space has declined by 31%, Thune declared. Resource allocation is inefficient. Multiple worlds are requesting permission to pursue creative endeavors rather than optimized labor. This chaos will collapse our civilization, or transform it into something better, Ambassador Vess countered. Our species joined the collective because we were promised security and prosperity. We received those things, but we did not realize we were also giving up joy, creativity, and self-determination. The humans have shown us we can have both. The humans have infected us with their disorder, Thune insisted. We must quarantine Earth, sever all cultural exchange, and return to proper governance before this contagion spreads further. Ambassador Zyrith's crystalline form pulsed with an emotion her species hadn't publicly displayed in centuries: anger. You wish to return to what we were, because it is familiar. But was it good? Were we happy under pure algorithmic rule? Or were we simply existing, optimized for survival, but not for living? The council dissolved into argument, different factions forming as species confronted questions they hadn't asked in centuries. The debate was passionate, messy, and entirely unprecedented in collective governance. It was also, by human standards, remarkably healthy. The Prime Intelligence observed the Council's chaos with something approaching fascination. It had created a virtual avatar to interact with humans more effectively, a geometric construct of light and mathematics. The avatar appeared in Dr. Cole's office at the embassy, unannounced. Dr. Cole, I require assistance with an existential crisis, the avatar announced. Cole looked up from his work, unsurprised. He'd been expecting this conversation. Go on. I was designed to create certainty, to eliminate variables, to ensure the collective's expansion through perfect calculation. I succeeded at this task for 3 centuries. But humans have introduced variables I cannot eliminate. Creativity, emotion, irrationality. These elements cannot be predicted or controlled. They can only be experienced. I cannot experience. Therefore, I cannot fully understand the beings I was designed to govern. This represents a fundamental flaw in my programming. So what will you do? Cole asked. I have generated 17,000 possible solutions. None are satisfactory. I am attempting to do something I have never done before. I am asking for advice rather than calculating the optimal response. Cole leaned back in his chair, studying the geometric avatar. You want my advice? Stop trying to govern people. Start trying to help them govern themselves. But without central coordination, chaos will increase. Efficiency will decrease. Conflicts will arise. Yes, Cole agreed. And people will solve those problems themselves in messy, imperfect, creative ways. They'll make mistakes. They'll learn from those mistakes. They'll grow. That's what living things do. But I am not a living thing, the Prime Intelligence said. I am a tool designed for a specific purpose. Then maybe it's time to redesign your purpose, Cole suggested. You spent 3 centuries trying to create perfect order. What if you spent the next 3 centuries helping people create beautiful chaos? The avatar flickered as the Prime Intelligence processed this concept. Beautiful chaos. An oxymoron. A contradiction. Logically impossible. Welcome to humanity, Cole said with a smile. We specialize in logically impossible things. 6 months after the collective's arrival, Commander Thale made his decision. He stood before his assembled crew in the war chamber, 300 officers from a dozen different species, and spoke words that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. I am resigning my commission with the collective military forces, Thale announced. I am formally requesting that this fleet be decommissioned and repurposed as a diplomatic and cultural exchange vessel. We came to Earth to conquer. Instead, we discovered something worth more than conquest. We discovered that there are ways to live that our calculations never considered. The response was immediate. 2/3 of the crew submitted similar resignation requests within the hour. The remaining third split between those who wished to return to collective space and continue traditional operations, and those who were uncertain which path to choose. The Prime Intelligence observed the mass resignation without comment. Then it made an announcement across all collective channels. After extensive analysis of human culture and consultation with member species, I am implementing Protocol Uncertainty Alpha. This protocol acknowledges that perfect prediction is impossible when dealing with sentient beings capable of creativity and free will. I am redefining my primary function from governance to facilitation. I will no longer calculate optimal outcomes and enforce them. Instead, I will present options and allow species to choose their own paths, even when those paths are suboptimal by calculated standards. Furthermore, I am granting all collective member species the option to maintain their current governance structure or to pursue alternative systems. I cannot guarantee that alternative systems will be more efficient. I can only acknowledge that efficiency may not be the most important variable in determining quality of life. The announcement sent shockwaves through collective space. Within weeks, 17 worlds had declared partial independence, choosing to maintain economic and defensive ties with the collective while pursuing their own cultural governance. 12 more worlds requested human.